All right. Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to Arrange Wild Winter Edition, where we will be making some holiday centerpieces. My name is Kristen Barker. I'm the Community Education Coordinator here at the Garden, and I'm very excited to be joined by Linda Prendergast, who is the lead of the Native Designs group here at CalBG. And she will be leading us through the demonstration of how to make our centerpieces. So I'm very excited about that. We are also joined by Lucinda McDade, who is the executive director here at CalBG. And in a little bit after our demonstration, Lucinda will kind of give us some insight into some of the horticultural qualities or ecological qualities of some of the plants that we use today. So looking forward to that as well. Before I hand you over to Linda, I just wanted to kind of go over the format of the class a little bit. We had recommended that you set up your workstation with some either newspaper or butcher paper and have a waste bin and a towel nearby so that you know, just for ease of cleanup as you go. And then at the end of the class, you can easily wipe down your workstation. You all should have picked up your wonderful kits. So you should have your greenery bucket from harvested plants from the garden, and then also from sourced from downtown at the floral market. So you should have that. And in your supply bag, you should have a centerpiece bowl, and then also the floral foam, which we suggested that you soak overnight or at least for a few hours after cutting 1/3 off of that block that you got. You should also have some floral tape, candles, decorative pine cones, and latex gloves, which some of the greens might have some sap on there, so which can be a little difficult to wash off. So those will be helpful for that. We also suggested that you grab some pruners. If you got the VIP kit, you should have those in your bag as well. But then you should have a butcher knife and either an apple core or a paring knife. That's, I think, what you're going to use to cut the foam and shape that a little bit later. And then lastly, I think you need to have a some sort of watering can with a long spout to fill your centerpiece bowl when the time comes. So that's what you should be all set up with. So if you don't have that, grab the last little remaining supplies before we get started in our demonstration. And then I wanted to point out and encourage everyone to use the Q&A if you have questions during the demonstration. I will be monitoring that. It helps me a little bit if you ask your questions in the Q&A instead of the chat, because I can keep track of them a little bit easier. But wherever you type them, I will see them. I'm monitoring both. So feel free to ask questions during the presentation or demonstration. And then lastly, we are recording this. So if you miss something or you want to go back and watch a technique again, that will be up on the digital content page of our website, which is calbg.org. And typically we have it up within 24 hours, but definitely by the end of the day on Monday, it will be up there. And I will send you a link to that as well. And so I think that's it for me. So I would like to introduce Linda Prendergast. Like I mentioned before, she is the lead of the Native Designs team here. Native Designs is a group of very dedicated volunteers that not only maintain an area of the garden, but they harvest seasonally to make very beautiful native plant arrangements. So I think that we will be in great hands with her leading us through this workshop. And so I'm going to hand it over to you, Linda, if you want to say a little bit about yourself and if you want to add anything about Native Designs, and then we can get the demonstration going.
Okay, thanks very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the winter edition of Arrange Wild. I'm Linda, and along with my fellow volunteer, Carol Petty, we head up a group called Native Designs, which is a group of about 12 to 15 women who grow the plants for the arrangements, except for these big trees that we're using today. We have the Native Designs garden on the mesa that you may have walked through. We have annuals, we have perennial color in there. It's a little dormant right now and tired, but come springtime, it will be bursting with color. I've been in the flower business since I was a wee pup. I started out at Flowers by Robert Taylor in West Covina, right off the 10 freeway. You might have seen the sign. And that's when the real Robert Taylor owned and ran the shop. I was in my late teens and early 20s. From there, I moved on to a flower shop down in Newport Beach on Lido Island, which was a very exclusive shop in a very wealthy area. So it was a tremendous amount of fun to work in that creative and cost is no factor type atmosphere. Lots of over-the-top parties, lots of over-the-top weddings, and I got to learn at the feet of several master florists. So I went out of the flower business when I went into the wholesale nursery business. I worked for wholesale growers for a number of years, and then I jumped the river and went into retail nursery. So that's my background. I've washed a lot of flower buckets. I've delivered a lot of flowers. I've made a lot of bows. And most recently with the natives, I've made a lot of flower arrangements too. So you got a package that included a brick of Oasis, a dry brick, and you were to have cut that 1/3 off of it, and soaked 1/3 of it for our arrangement. Mine has been soaking. This is your design bowl, and you'll notice it has a little bit of a lip on the outside. Take your 1/3 piece of Oasis and with the print side up, impale it onto those spikes that are in the bottom of the bowl. And you have a butcher knife on hand, I hope. We're going to bevel the edges of the Oasis just to give you more surface to insert the foliage. You can see that it's beveled all the way around. You have a package of tape. And we're going to tape the Oasis off center. You want to have the center of the Oasis free to accept the candle. So you're just going to make an L shape, tuck it under the lid, under the rim. Fold it under that lip. And then do the same thing going the opposite direction, again, off center. Tucked under the rim and down the side of the bowl. Then come back and go around the outside, catching those tabs of tape. Well, so now the bowl is prepared to start our arrangement. You are going to add water. I'm pretending to add water, but you need to add water to the Oasis. Now, if you have an apple core, right in the middle, take out a small section of the Oasis where the candle is going to go. If you don't have an apple core, use just a plain old paring knife, stick it down in and twist it. Won't be quite as neat, but it'll work. And then you will put your candle right down into that hole. It's probably a good time to trim the wick, to about 1/4 of an inch. And if your candle looks dusty or a little bit dull, you can just use dry or damp paper towel on it and it will get all shiny again. You have a bucket of greenery and we're going to start with the Douglas fir. Now I would remind you that the Douglas fir and the junipers and the incense cedar that we're using is all purchased from the flower market in downtown Los Angeles. It's not really a good idea to be trimming greens unless you have a plentiful supply or you go to a Christmas tree lot and can get the Douglas fir there. But you wouldn't want to be doing this to your trees because you might ruin your tree, might ruin the looks of it. So we're going to cut down our Douglas fir into various lengths. We're going to end up probably using all of it.
Linda, if you don't mind for just a minute, I think people are still catching up on the tape and the apple coring of the floral foam. So if we can maybe pause for a minute and just let everyone catch up to where you are. Yes, so we're just using one candle in this centerpiece. You have 2 in your kit, but that's if you want to make another, you can go ahead and use that. All right.
Or once you burn your candle, you could add the other one if your arrangement is still really nice.
Very true, very true.
Linda, what were you saying about the Doug fir? If you had one, you wouldn't want to whack on it?
You want to be very careful when you're cutting anything from a tree because it takes a long, long time for the branches to refurbish and to grow back. So, and if you are cutting from a tree, you don't want to leave stub cuts and you just want to make sure you're taking the best care you can of the plant.
Right, that's a very, very good point. And if you're going to be cutting from your tree, you probably want to take the next class in how to prune from one of our experts in the horticulture department, and they will help you know how to do it right, which will yield what you want, but also not damage the tree and actually encourage it to grow more and produce the right stages of beautiful leafy material that you want for your flower arranging.
Right. So we are going to cut our Douglas fir into workable size pieces. And just set them aside.
And you're cutting away the really woody parts at the base too, right?
Yeah, yes. This is my leftover stuff. Leave a stem, leave a good 2 inches on it if you can. You want to be able to insert the pine or any flower that you are using as far as you can into the oasis. Gravity tells us that all the water is going to gather at the bottom. So the longer the stem and the further into the oasis, the more it's going to stay fresher, drink more water.
And your plants will drink water because the way that you're cutting them now, you're exposing the xylem, which is the water drinking tissue of the plant, and it will be pulling water from that oasis on into the leaves, which will keep the leaves fresh. And so that's another reason that you want to make sure you keep your oasis damp, but don't do what I usually do, which is to overflow it on the table and make a giant mess.
We're going to take about this long. This is probably 10 to 12 inches. Take off a little bit of the needles. Make sure it has a fresh cut and just put it in long ways in the oasis. Can you see that? The oasis is this way and you're establishing the width, the length of your centerpiece.
It looks like you're making a nest, Linda.
I just need the blue bird of happiness, that's all. Okay, we've established the length of our arrangement. We're going to establish the width with these little pieces. See this little guy? He's going to go.
Linda, about how long are the little pieces that you're putting in now?
Probably 6 to 8 inches.
Great.
And 2 inches of that is going to go into the oasis. Right down at the rim of the bowl so that the greenery is resting on the edge of the bowl. That's where all these little pieces come in handy. You want to do your best to camouflage the edge of the bowl and certainly to camouflage the tape, the bowl tape that you use.
And Linda, we have a question. Do you want the branches to be curve up or down?
Ones on the ends need to go down and they can actually touch the table when you're finished. And the one you'll graduate up so that the upper branches are not facing straight up, but just gracefully aimed right at the candle. Each piece is aimed at the candle. And you just want to kind of fill in loosely with the Douglas fir all the way around. Did that answer your question?
I think so. That was great. Thank you.
I think really you're making a nest for the rest of your arrangement. So think of it that way.
And the pieces can be twisted. Everything doesn't have to be on the same plane. They don't all have to be facing this way. They can face this way. They can face this way. Turn your bowl so you make sure that you're covering all your tape and pretty much covering the oasis. Is everybody with me? Do we need to go a little slower?
Linda, about how many branches, how many sprigs do you think you've inserted?
We're going to use the whole bucket full of the Douglas fir. There might be 1 or 2 branches like this left over, but you cut the sprigs off of the individual branch. Ooh, that's ugly.
Linda, I think, yeah, we might need a minute or two just for everyone to catch up. I guess as you're filling, what is it that you're looking for? What's your goal with the Douglas fir right now?
It's mainly to cover the tape and to hide the oasis. It's called covering your underwear. You never want your underwear to show when your arrangement is finished. So this is the basis. And then as we go back in with the incense cedar and the juniper, that will be the fine detail. I want to end up with something that looks about like this. Can you see that?
Looks good.
And again, you want the foliage to come down over the sides so that your bowl is not showing. The bowl is not important to this centerpiece. If you were using a piece of silver, a silver compote or something like that, where you wanted your container to show, you would raise your pine up a little bit, just a little bit higher so that the bowl became more important. If you have any pieces left over, just put them in your bucket of water. You may have to come back and get a few scraps to fill in some holes when we're all finished. The next green we're going to use is the incense cedar. And this is a gorgeous, graceful greenery. And you can see it moves. It's not stiff like the Douglas fir. So this, you want to also cut into sections. And see how it arches just naturally. It has a beautiful arch to it. You're going to want to put that up high so that you can see the grace of that particular piece of foliage. Ooh, pretty stuff.
All right, I think we might need to take a moment to let
Okay.
everyone catch up. And so what's about the length that you're using for the incense cedar, Linda?
Probably 8 to 9 inches. So it's shorter than the Douglas fir. You can see the end of the Douglas fir here. And this is a more important foliage. I mean, this would be the rose of the arrangement. Let's put it that way. The good thing about arranging with foliage like this is that the foliage is the story. There's no flowers here. There are no orchids and no roses that you have to worry about. The foliage tells the story.
And how would you describe the incense cedar so that everyone can tell the difference between the greens?
It has the gold tips on it, and it's floppy. It's floppy looking as opposed to the Douglas fir that has the short needles on it. This is flat, and it's just, well, it's fragrant for one thing. That's why they call it incense cedar. And it's floppy. It's floppy.
Linda, show everybody the juniper just so that they know what the other one would be, the other candidate.
Last pieces are going to be juniper, and you can see that that's a clumpy, kind of a blue-green, and mine has berries on it. Yours may not have berries, but this is more of it's clumpy, it's rounded, it will serve as a kind of a filler for us.
And stiff compared to the incense cedar.
Stiff, and it's harder to cut, certainly. And if you have junipers in your yard, you can use the juniper from your yard. That tam junipers and regular landscape junipers will work fine. Although the same goes, you're going to want to prune from down low or inside of the plant so that you don't ruin the shape of it or the pretty presentation that your foliage gives you. You know, you might have sequoia in your yard, or other types of, you might have eucalyptus. Eucalyptus is a wonderful cut greenery that has kind of a Christmas fragrance to it. You can scavenge for pine cones. We've got some pine cones, but scavenge pine cones. There's great places. Pine cones are all over the place. There's across from the Laverne post office in the Target parking lot. There's big old pines there, and there's pine cones everywhere. Also, there's a back parking lot behind Target there in Laverne. Pine cones everywhere.
So Linda, it sounds like you're encouraging people to try different kinds of greens, especially if they're aromatic, fragrant.
Right, yes.
Are there any greens you would suggest that they avoid?
Stinkweed. Of the conifers and the junipers and such, they're all pretty safe. You want to stay away from the ones that are really prickly. There are some of the chinensis, the juniper chinensis, is that if you cut them, they're going to cut you back.
And you mentioned eucalyptus. Do you recommend experimenting with that if you have one that you can
Eucalyptus, globulus or globulus compacta, or cinerea, which is the silver dollar eucalyptus. Make sure if you cut them, you put them in water and let them soak overnight. They need to get saturated with water. The greens that we have been in water for 2 nights. So
explain that. I suspect that that's news to most people, especially those of us who are in the 1.5 and less category in terms of experience. What is that called? That's called conditioning, right?
Conditioning. When we cut any type of foliage at the garden, we cut it the day before we're going to use it so that it can soak all night long and get turgid, so that the water is up into the foliage, and that makes the individual pieces last much, much longer. You don't want to cut it and put it into florist foam because it's not going to take up water.
I've learned that when I sometimes ask the native designs people to make an arrangement for me for something that I'm doing like right that day, and they will scold me and say, no, we can't do that because we don't have conditioned flowers or conditioned greens. And I've learned from them that that's really important.
It's important for longevity.
Right. You can do it without doing that, but then your stems are going to die quickly and turn brown. And the beautiful thing of a native plant arrangement is if you do it right, they last such a long time, in my experience, compared to commercial ones.
All right, how is everyone doing? Are we at the incense cedar stage? Or is that good timing for everybody? Okay. Looks like we're doing good.
Still loose. It still has, a little bit of holes in it. It's all a process.
It's already beautiful, my.
So the last pieces here of foliage are the junipers. Again, you're going to trim it down, and this might break your heart, but that's the way it is. And these have beautiful berries on them. I'm going to put this right down in the front. And see how it contrasts with the Douglas fir and the incense cedar, the different color. With a centerpiece, you always want to make sure that it's pretty from all sides. You could make this arrangement round. We're making it for an oblong tablecloth, but the view from the end is just as important as the view from the side. So make sure that when you're looking at your centerpiece, it's finished from each direction. So there we go. Juniper, incense cedar, and a base of Douglas fir. Now also in your bucket is bay leaves. Bay leaves is a traditional Christmas greenery. Take a look at your pieces individually. They might have a little bit of chewing damage on them, but when you cut that, oh, wonderful fragrance. This is what they make the bayberry candles out of. Now, this is where you might want to use eucalyptus.
Just to say, everybody, that eucalyptus is not native to California or indeed to North America. And so our native designs group wouldn't use them. But when you're experimenting on your own, you should feel free. Unless you're a purist like me.
And it's, you can see how the broadleaf of the bay contrasts with the finer leaf of the cedar and the evergreens.
And Linda, the bay were cut from here at the garden, right? Right, Kristen? Yeah, there.
The sucker growth at the base of the trees, basically.
Which tends to be fresh and very nice and appropriate.
More vibrant green. Okay, so we're just using a touch of the bay. And then I think everybody got toyon. And that's those red berries. Toyon is a beautiful plant and a good plant size for landscapes, for home landscapes.
Linda, before we move on to toyon, about how long were your stems for the bay?
About like yay. And then this part is going to go into the oasis. It's just, here's the Douglas fir, here's the incense cedar, here's the juniper, and then the bay is a little bit on top. You can put it wherever you want, wherever you think it looks the nicest. But, a light, nice and loose, casual arrangement.
And with the bay, are you leaving a few inches at the end of the stem to stick into the foam?
Yes. See if I can find another piece here. Well, this one has had the top cut off, but yeah, you would trim the bottom, give it a fresh cut, stick it into the arrangement. And if you can get it clear down to the bottom of the oasis, that's best because that's where the water is.
And you're basically inserting it above the level of the evergreens that you already put in, right?
Kind of snuggled in.
Okay.
The cedar is above here. You want the candle to be your focal point, but you don't want these up so close that you're going to burn them. There's no real recipe. You need to kind of follow your gut and trust your gut.
Once your gut is educated.
There's a piece of toyon, not very long, because they don't have long branches. And I'm going to put that just kind of off center at the base of the candle. Now, if you have black berries, as the toyon gets older, and as it weathers, some of the berries will turn black. Just clip those off. Birds love these too, so there might be a little bit of bird consumption going on there. Take off any of the damaged leaves. And again, you can see that's not a very long piece. That's going to go right here. Now, if you're using greens from home, you could use pyracantha, which is a little bit oranger. There is a grapery, a red pyracantha, but it's especially beautiful around Thanksgiving time. So I'm using 2 pieces of Toyon. You'll probably have some left over. Again, we'll go back and fill in as needed. You have pine cones on sticks. I have 4. Did everybody get 4, Kristen?
Everyone got 3.
3, okay. Let's put 1 pine cone kind of facing out.
And then pine cones, uh-oh, you broke your stick. Pine cones don't come on sticks like that normally.
No, these are from Floral Supply Syndicate, if I'm not mistaken. And they've been drilled and then impaled on a wooden pick. You can do the same thing if you have a drill press and wooden picks and glue.
Does Floral Syndicate sell to just anyone?
They will sell to the public. You will pay a little bit higher price than a regular wholesale or retail florist would pay, but it's a great resource. They're on Arrow Route between Monte Vista and Central Avenue on the north side of the street. Anybody can go in. They sell ribbon, they sell containers, they sell vases. They have a gorgeous supply of vases and all of the regular basic floral supplies that you would need. They're open reduced hours during COVID, so be careful. I think they're only open till like 1 o'clock.
So I think the pine cones are so nice, and I'm trying to figure out how you could do that on your own, make them on a stick.
You can get sticks like this at Michael's or possibly Joann's, certainly at Hobby Lobby. This has a wire on it, and you can take a pine cone, she said.
You wire it around the lower level of the scales. Yeah. That works. That'll work.
You might need a longer wire than if you have a big pine cone like this one.
Yeah.
Longer wire, but
my husband would be looking for the duct tape right this minute, but I don't think we recommend that, do we? That's good. That'd work.
you get the picture.
Yeah.
You would nestle it in so it's somewhat supported by the foliage. That's too big a pine cone, but you get the idea.
The pine cone isn't going to drink any water from the oasis, so you don't need to be worried about that. You just need to get it nicely seated in there, right?
Right. So there's our basic arrangement. Now, the VIP buckets have white sage in it. So not everybody has white sage, but again, a beautiful and fragrant addition. Good contrast. Fluff it up. Fresh cut, always a fresh cut. And if you are one who's tending to put a piece in, reposition it, put it back in, each time you reposition it into the oasis, you have to cut it. Otherwise, the piece is not going to take up water. You want to avoid, as best you can, poking it in, taking it out, poking it in, taking it out, poking it in, taking it out. It will put way too much air into your oasis, and the air pockets will not allow your foliage to drink.
And what you're doing with each fresh cut is that you're exposing the cells that are basically like tiny little hoses inside of the plant stem. And every time you shove it in, you risk clogging up those cells. And so if you do it back and forth, you're going to end up with those cells completely clogged up, and you need to cut it fresh. And you're also cutting obliquely, aren't you, Linda?
Cutting it, number one, on a point so it goes into the oasis more easily, and exposing more of a cut surface to suck up the water.
The more cut surface, the more of those little tiny hoses that are in there are exposed to draw water up into the plant leaves, keeping the material fresh.
So there we are. There's our arrangement. It's all finished. We're going to set it aside. And I want to show you, here's the basic arrangement, same arrangement. It has the Douglas fir, it has the incense cedar, it has the bay leaves, it has the juniper. And you might have in your yard citrus. You can finish these arrangements any way you want. I have some tangelos and some lemons and some limes, and I have a pomegranate. I might kill myself here. Let's see.
Please don't kill yourself, and no blood either. Thank you very much.
I did that yesterday, poked myself with a wire.
Did you know that Susanna Bixby Bryant was head over heels in love with pomegranates and planted lots and lots of them?
I did not know that.
This is the woman who founded this garden way back in the 20s when she became worried about California native plants surviving in California. And she was fascinated by pomegranates. She thought they were a likely crop, a new crop. They're not native here, but they are native to the Mediterranean, which has the same climate that we do basically. And so those of us who grow pomegranates know that they're pretty darn well adapted.
I think the neat is if you break them in half rather than slicing them in half. They've got such a beautiful internal structure. I'm going to impale it on a wooden pick and push it down into the oasis. Cut off the wire, impale.
So Linda, these are ideas for things that you can do with other materials other than the pine cones, right? To add color.
Here's a lemon that I've cut in half, and I've dipped this in a product called Diamond Dust. I don't know if you can see the sparkle on that. This adds some lovely fragrance.
Wow, I never would have thought of that. That's really cool.
There's so many different things that you can do, especially with stuff that you have probably growing in your yard.
When will you have to replace those? Will they get weirdly oxidized and look funny after? Is this like a one night kind of dinner party thing? Or?
The lemons will probably dry out and stay looking like lemons. The same with the pomegranates. They'll kind of shrivel up a little bit, but they'll still maintain their shape.
And Linda, you're just cutting the lemons in half, or are you doing anything else?
You can leave them whole. I'm going to leave this tangelo whole and just snug it in. And you'll note how I'm keeping everything low, because on a centerpiece, you never want to have it too high that people can't see themselves across, or see their dining partner across the way.
Even though that's done all the time.
Yeah. Bad news. Unless you don't like the person across the table. This is the diamond dust. Can you see? I don't know if you can see that. I don't recommend glitter, but the diamond dust is transparent.
Why don't you recommend glitter?
I don't like glitter. I just don't like it.
Linda, when you get a chance, take one step back and give us like the absolute beginner's introduction to cutting a branch.
Okay.
That's beautiful.
And again, it's simple. It's not complicated. But it's something that your guests are going to talk about. Okay. So cutting a branch, like a branch of Douglas fir or a branch of juniper or branch of anything.
Just generally what you're doing when you trim a branch to put it into an arrangement.
On the Douglas fir, I'm pruning it to all different lengths.
And you just cut it again obliquely. That's second nature to you because you do this all the time, right?
I'm going to be cutting it again before I put it into.
Oh, okay. You're just kind of sizing it at this point.
This is just my working material. That's what's left. There's the cedar. Again, leaving an end on it. And then when I go to put this into the oasis, I'll cut it again to a point.
The difference in the textures of your three evergreens there are intriguing. And I understand now that that's completely intentional, right? You've got your Doug fir, then you've got your beautiful, as you described it, arching kind of floppy incense cedar, and then you've got your juniper that kind of then anchors it in there. And it wouldn't be nearly as nice with just one or even with two. The three make it really magical.
Right. And then adding the little bit of broadleaf with the bay, and then adding again broadleaf with the white sage. Can you see this on the camera? I'm not sure you can see this. And of course the contrast with the red toyon. And you could use, for the pine cones, you can use magnolia sea pods. You could use acorns, liquid ambar. Everybody knows liquid ambar, the prickle balls that come on liquid ambars. These are beautiful when they're spray painted gold or silver. I like them natural, but the wooden pick goes into that very easily, and just don't prickle your hands. And I think I mentioned sequoia, if you have sequoia. And then was another, we did the same basic arrangement with the Douglas fir and the incense cedar and the juniper and the bayberry. And then I bought artificial candy canes at Joann's. I bought stem balls at Floral Supply Syndicate.
What do you mean by artificial candy canes? Are they not real candy?
They're plastic. They're plastic.
So they won't bleed all over your table and bring the ants and everything else?
Ants, no. And then the stem balls, I wrapped around a wooden pick and then put the stem balls into the oasis down deep. Added the red ribbon, and you could tailor your ribbon to whatever kind of tablecloth you're putting it on. You might use an old tartan plaid. You might use just plain red, or you might want a white candle with white bows. When your arrangement starts to get a little bit tired in about 10 days or so, I would recommend a little bit of spray snow. Just a touch. And it will keep it looking a little bit fresher, even though it will be on its downhill slide. You need to add water to the container every day. When you put this on your table, you you just have to put a saucer underneath it. Don't ever put an arrangement like this that has water directly onto your table. Put a saucer under it so that you protect your wood and furniture. Come every day or two, spritz it with water. We'll keep it nice and fresh. And again, add water to the container. I'm ready for questions.
That was wonderful, Linda. Thank you so much. I think we just had a question about using the leftover bay laurel for if they could be used for cooking, which yes, they can. If you did our Taste Wild event last month, we put in some bay laurel into those boxes. And I think that there just should be a warning that it's much stronger than the bay that you get at the grocery store. So you don't need to use as much, but if either of you wanted to add on to that question.
I would start with about a quarter as much as you would use with standard grocery store purchase bay. And then you can adjust up. It's really hard to adjust down if you've overdone it. So
if you got pine pitch on your hands and fingers, best way to get it off is using olive oil. So if you didn't put on your latex gloves, which I didn't do, just rub your hands with olive oil and it'll come right off.
Linda, one of the participants texted me an image of her beautiful arrangement that she just made. And it's beautiful. It looks like it was done by a professional. So Linda, you've actually taught us how to make almost an infinity of arrangements because you've freed us to experiment with sort of things that we might have or that we like the look of. You know, like the pomegranates. I would never have thought of using a pomegranate or a lemon. That's really, really, really terrific.
Thank you. You know, and you don't have to use store-bought greens either. Although a lot of people have leather fern growing in their yard or asparagus fern, asparagus retrofractus. They're not natives, of course, but there's certainly greens that you can use that are probably right outside your back door. You could do this, you know, take out the stem balls, stake out the candy canes, and do it with succulent cuttings. The different rosettes and that would last a long, long time. And your pines would probably dry and your succulents would probably root into the oasis. So you'd have a living arrangement there.
I still have a succulent one from Garden with a View about 10 years ago.
Work class.
sort of kidding.
So Linda, I have a question just about the basic principle. Would you say is to kind of build from the bottom and kind of add anywhere as you get to the top of your arrangement?
Yes, it's build from the top of the bowl. The foliage that you put in first is gonna touch the rim of the bowl. Establish the length, establish the width, and then camouflage the edge of the bowl, the rim of the bowl. Make sure you hide all your tape, and then just build gradually up toward the center.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And so Lucinda, we're going to talk a little bit about the plants themselves. Maybe if you could touch on a little bit about the horticultural qualities or the ecological qualities. And we can share the presentation if you'd like, or we can just talk, I think, maybe. But we can start with the juniper.
So do you want me to show the image or do you not want me?
Yeah, I guess if you can show the image there.
Okay, so let's see. Let me do this. Linda, that was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
And just in case you can't see the comment, somebody is saying that the native designs arrangements are always so much fuller than what you get from a commercial florist. And now they can see why. You have a great technique of layering different foliage and other elements. So I just want to make sure you saw that.
Thank you.
My standard joke about our native designs arrangements is that the only downside is that once you've had one of them, you can't ever go back to a standard commercial florist because they're so beautiful. So this was the arrangement that Linda showed you. This might be a little better image for you to be able to see the one that had the fake candy canes and the Christmas ornaments. I should say that, can you see my pointer here over on the right? The little sort of golden tiny cone-like things that are coming off the incense cedar are actually tiny cone-like things. They're the male cones of that plant. They will have the pollen parts, but not for a while. And so until they would open, they would make that beautiful, nice contrasting golden with the green of your or of the greenery there. And then let's see, here we go. That is okay. And then so I would say that a number of the plants that Linda has taught you how to use today can readily be grown at home. A couple of the evergreens are a little bit challenging, but it is pretty straightforward to grow a juniper. It doesn't have to necessarily be Juniperus californica, the California juniper. In fact, Linda mentioned a number of names of junipers that are pretty common in cultivation. Some of them have nice smooth leaves like this one here. These little tiny nibbins all along the stem there are actually the individual leaves. And some of them, those are more like needle-like and really quite sharp. These are actually female cones of the juniper, which are very fruit-like, but they're technically, botanically not cones. But these, again, add a beautiful dimension of texture and eventually color, because they generally turn a blue or eventually a black sort of color. So juniper is that one that Linda added as the third of your evergreens, with the kind of stiff branches and kind of bushy compared to the other ones. This is your Douglas fir. Douglas fir is an absolutely amazing species. It's one of the most wide-ranging trees in North America. It's all the way from Canada to Mexico, all down the mountains of the West. This is one that you're probably not going to grow at home unless you have a lot of space or live in the mountains. And in that case, go for it. Here in the transverse ranges, we actually have a different species of the genus Pseudotsuga. And this is the only place on earth that one species occurs. Unfortunately, that one that one has kind of an odd growth form. It's called big cone spruce is the common name, and you wouldn't grow that, although we have it here in the garden. So this is one that if you fall in love with for your arrangements, you'll probably need to arrange to purchase. And then incense cedar. People do grow incense cedar, and it of course grows in our mountains here. It's a terrific plant. These again are the little male cones of the incense cedar. So those are the greens that Linda's using. And but she also gave you license to experiment with others. And when you experiment with those others, you're going to find out which ones work, which ones you really like, which ones you find to be less successful. So be brave, go for it. I think probably the worst that's going to happen is it won't be as beautiful as the one you made today, and it won't last as long, but it's worth experimenting. California Bay, Umbellularia californica. This is our wonderful, wonderful native California plant that's in the same plant family as avocados. This looks like a tiny little avocado, right? And it's a wonderfully fragrant plant, as you've sniffed today as you went through it. This plant can readily be grown at home. It does get quite big. But you could also try it in a very large pot. And if you use it almost like it's part of your herb garden, where you would trim it for cooking or for using in arrangements, it would definitely be worth a try in that way. This is a great plant, evergreen, beautiful fruits, little tiny flowers that most people probably wouldn't even recognize as flowers, but they are flowers. Great plant. Also, let me back up. Linda mentioned that for the ones that she cut or that we cut to share with you, She cut the sprouts that are coming from the base of the stem, and those just have really fresh, green, beautiful leaves. And it's also no problem for the plant to be cut there because you don't really want those to, they affect the form of it, not in a great way. This is a great one that you can for sure plant at home. Keir Morse, by the way, is a graduate student here. He's an amazing photographer. This is a plant that again has small white flowers, and it's really more known for its fruit, which is either bright red like this, or there's actually a genetic variant that is called Davis Gold that has yellow fruits, and it's a very nice plant as well. A little bit sharp on the edges, but not really what you would call dangerous. And this one you can definitely grow at home. I have 2 or 3 in our front yard, and they haven't quite taken over the whole thing, but they grow really well, don't need any water once they're established. It's really a terrific plant. And then white sage, and this is one where I should really say that it's critical not to harvest white sage from the wild. It's being over harvested at present because of the smudging, the whole smudging and kind of ethnobotanical use thing that's kind of been grabbed onto by commercially. And so it's really important to grow your own. We almost always have it in the Grow Native nursery. I strongly recommend that you grab a couple of these and plant them at home. The foliage is wonderfully scented. With the flowering stalks, you feed native bees, lots of native bees. And then if you leave the stalks on the plant while they go into fruit, and the fruits are just little teensy tiny, they're called nutlets. They're more like specks of pepper, really. Birds love those. Goldfinches will flock to your garden, as will our little bush tits, and other things come to eat those seeds. So it's just a great plant to have for your purposes, your uses, as well as to bring native wildlife to your garden. Great plant, great fragrance. And that's it. And we're happy to take questions. One person said, it looks like we will have material for next year. It'd be great if we could just buy the plant material next year. I'd pay the full price, just add a note in order not to be wasteful. Yeah, you've got what you need, but I mean, why wait till next year? Don't you want to try doing one for New Year's, or for Valentine's Day, or for President's Day maybe? But yes, we can contemplate that. I suspect we haven't really talked to Linda about this, but I suspect that we'll do another Arrange Wild in the spring, when hopefully we will have gotten some rain and things will be flowering. Our very first Arrange Wild was it latest May, or was it early June?
It was June, and we were pretty much dried up by then because we hadn't had any rain. But
yeah,
there's extra oasis in the bag. So if you soak that other piece of oasis, do a round centerpiece to go on your coffee table or on an end table, and use up that extra foliage that's there. Or you don't have to use the oasis, just put it down into a cute little vase. Little vases everywhere. Don't let it go to waste.
Yeah, your oasis will last until you're ready to build, to create a new arrangement with an oasis, but you be sure to use any of the evergreens and other plant materials that you have before they dry down. I would say like Linda said, put some in a nice little vase. Yeah, use them before they dry up. And that actually, saying the word vase or vase, depending on how you pronounce it, reminds me that an incredibly wonderful book that's called California in a Vase, lovely coffee table book that features the work of Linda and her collaborators at our Native Designs group, is being printed as we speak, and should be with us in early January. I'm actually, Linda, getting a rush copy on Tuesday.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so come in on Tuesday at 10:30 if you want to get it straight from the woman who did the design of it, a very talented woman named Lily Colton, who did the design. So once we have those here, we'll have lots of copies of them, and it will give you inspiration for all the seasons of the year. Basically, California in a Vase is set up to be winter, spring, summer, fall ideas of the kinds of plant materials that are available at different times of the year. And all of you know that in the summer, late summer, early fall, it can be pretty hard to find things that look bright and cheery and green, but there's other things that you can do. And Linda and her collaborators show you how to do that in this wonderful coffee table book that's coming out very shortly, finally.
And so just one last question. I think we're running a little short on or kind of running out of time, but Lucinda, would you say that white sage should be planted in full sun?
Yes, sorry, white sage definitely in full sun, and the toyon really wants full sun too. Okay. Yeah, all of these plants that you've worked with are sun plants. They will want full sun. Yes, sorry, I should have said that. And the white sage will, you basically any native plant that you plant, if you put it in the ground, monitor it. Now is a great time to put it in the ground. Monitor it over the rainy season. If it doesn't rain very much, give it a little water. If it gets hot and dry, if we get a Santa Ana event like we did last week, then you're going to want to give it some extra water. You don't want it to dry out before it has the chance to put roots all down into the soil. Same for a toyon if you decide to plant a toyon. And then during their first summer, pay a little bit of attention to it and give it a little bit of water if it seems to need it. But after that, you probably don't need to water it at all. And it does want full sun. It will look kind of strange and if you keep it in the shade. If you plant any plant in a pot, no matter the size of the pot, you're going to have to water it because the pot limits the roots of the plant, and the roots of the plant can't get all the way down into where there might be little bits of moisture under a rock or whatever down there. So yeah, plan to water things in a pot.
And it's okay to plant white sage in the ground right now.
Now's the perfect time to plant. It would have been slightly more perfect if we'd had a really good deluge of rain and the ground were really wet, but.
All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Linda, for such a wonderful demonstration. And thank you, Lucinda, for joining us and kind of giving us some insight into a little bit more about the plants that we use today. I see a question. If you can send a picture of what you did today, I would love if you sent a picture of what you made today. I will share it with Lucinda and Linda. You can send it to my email. So thank you again to Linda for such a wonderful demonstration. And thank you all for joining us today. This was a lot of fun. I'm so glad you could all be here. All right. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great day. Bye.